We, too, have seen the face of such evil with attacks in places such as Charlottesville, Pittsburgh, and Charleston. And in the wake of the New Zealand tragedy, I want to make one thing very clear. We will not permit such hate in the homeland.
Welcome back. That was Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen this morning, speaking just days after the president tried to downplay the threat from extremists like white supremacists. Despite Nielsen's assertion, fewer than 1 in 5 FBI terror cases target white supremacists, according to the Daily Beast, even though there were more than 1,000 hate groups in the U.S. last year, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and 148 white nationalist groups, up 100% from the previous year. The New Zealand terror attacks are just the latest reminder that it is not just law enforcement that is struggling to deal with white nationalism. Social media companies are also struggling to rein in extremism, radicalizing contents of all kinds. Facebook says it removed 1.5 million videos of the attack within 24 hours. But there are still a lot more. With me now is Frank Figliuzzi, former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI, now an MSNBC national security analyst. Also, Ben Collins, who covers extremism and the internet for NBC News. Frank Figliuzzi, what is law enforcement doing to try and tackle this threat?
So the scourge of online radicalization is not something new to law enforcement and intelligence agencies, but what is new is the pace that it's happening with regard to the far right and white nationalism and violence associated with those groups. So we've got pretty good body of knowledge with regard to how radical, violent Muslims get radicalized online. But what we're seeing, Katie, is an interesting comparison to what we're seeing in social media and radicalization on the far right. What's being done about it? Look, this is almost a game of whack-a-mole, where as soon as you take down an offensive video or posting, another one comes up, or you deny someone privileges for access, another one comes up later. And it is a beast that needs to be tamed. And currently, legislation and the sharing of information and a strategy between law enforcement and those platform providers is not at the point yet where we're making a dent in it. And while we're sitting back watching some of this happen, we have to ask ourselves, and Congress needs to ask themselves, are the tools there for the FBI? Is there proper oversight of Silicon Valley and those platforms? And what's the strategy to deal with it?
What can these tech companies do?
They can use the ISIS playbook, which they've used this in the past. They know how to take down these videos. They know how to find these videos, and they know how to find the paths that lead people from being just like a racist on the internet to being extremists in the internet. These are all identifiable. Researchers have been telling Facebook and YouTube this for
Are there certain keywords they can
Yeah, I mean, there are
track?
very specific pathways from relatively normal political content to these extremist videos, because extremists know that's what they're good at, right? They know how to recruit. They know how to use keywords specifically, or things that end up in autoplay boxes. So that can take, you've probably seen it with people around your life. I think everybody knows somebody at this point who turned into kind of a crazy person from YouTube or Facebook or something, because they started in a pretty decent place and they ended at a pretty bad place because they were vulnerable to that kind of message.
If they know how to do that, why aren't they doing it?
Politics. The answer is politics.
It's
very easy to say, we should not have ISIS on our platform, right? It's not very easy to say, because there's gradations of white nationalism, right? It's not very easy to identify this is acceptable, this is unacceptable. And that's really, there's a lot of money on the far right, and even, not necessarily the far right, saying, "Oh, this is a speech issue."
Yeah.
Like when Ted Cruz
conservatives
will
take on the issues and say you're trying to quiet us. Why do conservatives feel like they need to help protect right-wing extremists?
Right. So their base is not that, but their base can brush up against these things that brush up against the extremists. Does that make sense?
So that's why it's political.
Yeah, exactly. It's become political. So when Elizabeth Warren puts up that thing a couple weeks ago saying, maybe we should break up these companies, and Ted Cruz says, yes, of course we should break up these companies. He's trying to, he and the people in that sphere are trying to take that conversation and turn it into this conversation about protecting all speech on these platforms.
Because there's this idea that if you're going to tamp down, you're going to suppress or quiet these certain extremist voices, that it will somehow bleed into conservative voices, I guess.
Right, exactly. But really, people should be taking a stand on the
Yeah.
right here and saying, no, this is not us, because it isn't them.
It's weird that
Yeah.
they are defending that.
Yeah.
Frank Figliuzzi, is politics part of the issue in trying to root out or trying to, you know, when you're looking at ISIS or you're looking at radical Islamic terrorism, I covered a number of stories where the FBI would track young kids or young men, and they would talk to them online and say, you know, here's how you build a bomb, or here's where you get your bomb making materials, and they tracked that person as that person radicalized and then arrested them before they could do anything bad. Why is the same not being done for white extremists, or is the same being done and we just don't know about it?
No, it's time to seriously ask that question and to wrestle with it, because politics does enter in. And as you said, as soon as you mention even the need for a domestic terrorism statute, right, that addresses this, you'll hear people start screaming, this is the thought police. You're trying to suppress thought. My answer to that is this is not about thought. This is about verbalizing an intention to commit violence. That's what we're talking about. And when you have that going on in droves online, it's time to hit it head on and do it in partnership between law enforcement and providers. Look, we only need to look at recent past. Cesar Sayoc, essentially a kind of radicalized online person, getting his media from one source, aligning himself with this president, sending bombs to politicians and to media organizations. Look at the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter, same thing. His history online, one of advocating violence and white supremacy. And if we don't get out in front of it, it'll just keep happening, because the president represents a bully pulpit where there's fresh daily content of radicalization. The same goes for a state-subsidized news network that refuses to denounce this kind of thing. Radical Islamists would give their right arm to have that kind of fresh daily content going on, and we're seeing it happen on the far right.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it just because the word white is involved, because it's called white extremism? That's why there's such pushback and this idea that there's a thought police. If it was black extremism, if it was Muslim extremism, if it was Indian extremism, would that be as hard to tackle?
You're asking the right questions, and I think there's a body of evidence now, Katie, that indicates that, look, when white people commit these kinds of crimes, they're crazy, and when people of other color commit these crimes, they're terrorists. We still don't have a domestic terrorist statute that draws a distinction between robbing a bank to put food on your table and robbing a bank to fund blowing up a building for political purposes. Both those people get 10 years in prison, and I'm here to tell you it's time to think about a new domestic terrorism statute that puts another tool in law enforcement's toolbox.
So I feel like what both of you guys are saying is that Congress needs to do more. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frank Figliuzzi, Ben Collins. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Elucidating.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.